Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin the first set of panel discussion where we're going to have a deep discussion on benefits and challenges of cybersecurity, regulatory requirements, and economic challenges. Before we begin, I request everybody to please turn your cameras. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the moderator for the session, we have Mr. Ajay Verma, Senior Director, AppsNA Application and Cloud Technology, Capgemini. Our first panelist, Mr. Prasun Srivastava, Senior Solutions Architect, India and SAARC Region, Cloud Protection and Licensing, Thales. Mr. Sachin Waingankar, Vice President and Head Cloud, Werks India Private Limited. Mr. Sanjay Das, Joint Secretary, IT and Electronics, West Bengal. Director, West Bengal Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, West Bengal. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our next panelist, Shri Ashok Kaul, Deputy Director General, Cloud and Data Center Group, National Informatics Center, Government of India, DGVCL, Dakshin, Gujarat, VIJ Company, KSEBL, Kerela State Electricity Board Limited. So I hope we are all ready, panelists are ready, and now I may request a moderator to please take it forward from here. Order to everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, MC. I'm audible, right? Just checking the. All right. So, welcome all the panel members, and thanks for your participations, right? So let's get started. But before I ask specific questions or panel member to share their views, I just want to set the context, in terms of the challenges put in front of the industry, right? Which will kind of drive the overall conversation we are going to have. And I'm sure we're going to have a good conversations, right? So if you look at, what's happening right now across the industry, we are seeing the disruptions happening, and utilities industry is one of the industry we are seeing, the disruptions happening in a big way. We are seeing non-utilities player like consumers, right, becoming the prosumers, the builders setting up the solar panel, non-utilities players like Google, Tesla, the battery storage company, right? Non-utilities player are kind of coming in and disrupting the overall utilities industry, right? And what does it really mean is, it's impacting their top and bottom line. If you look at the utilities as overall, it's impacting their top and bottom line. And what does it really mean is, I would say, right, it's a high time for them to really look into the current operating model, which I would say maybe the traditional operating model, and see what are the changes they need to do to drive the future growth and also to be more sustainable, right? So that's one of the perspective or the context. The second one, what I'm seeing is, if you look at many other industries like retail, healthcare, or finance, and many other industries, they are way ahead when we look at the overall digital transformation journey. And utilities as an overall still lagging in the digital transformation journey, right? And I would just summarize this in a way that, the one size fits all which utilities used to have is not going to work. And there is a huge expectation from utilities to really focus on or gear up and focus on three main categories. And I think the previous keynote speaker also kind of talked about it. One is more on how do we really improve the customer experience, right? It's tailor the service and product based on what the customer really needs, right? Deliver the right kind of services. The second one is more on the operational excellence. How do we really bring the efficiency to the overall business process to drive or cut down the OpEx cost, right? Which has always been a pain point for the utilities. The third one, which we have started seeing, is the new business model, right? How do we really monetize the data, the services, right? And create a new source of the revenue, right? So basically, to move away from the commodity-based business to the new service-based model, right? And what I would say to do this, right? Utilities need to focus on the core business operations or the core capabilities without focusing on non-functional requirement. And what I would say is, to do this, right? What is out there? And I think I see that the cloud is the right platform where they really need to embrace to move towards the cloud and start focusing on building those core capabilities with the right kind of speed and agility. That's the one perspective, but also making sure that they don't need to focus on non-functional requirement, whether it's a scalability or enhanced security, and also lowering down the total cost of ownership, right? So so with that, what I would say, let's kick this in from the whole panel discussion. Before I put forward my first question to Mr. Prasun, I just want all the the audience who is watching this panel discussion, please put your questions on the Q&A box. We'll try to pick them as much as possible at the end of the sessions, and if we can't pick them, we will come back with the right kind of answers offline, right? So with that, the first question to Mr. Prasun, right? So what are the notable global trends which is being followed specifically to the power sector when it comes to the cybersecurity? If you can share your views, and again, just because we have the time constraints, so
Sure.
please limit your
Sure.
answer accordingly.
Sure. So just to echo your thoughts, actually, smart metering as a service is really building up globally, and everybody is looking at the power of the cloud to deliver, or rather lower the total cost of ownership of this particular sector. When it comes to utilities, the most notable cybersecurity related issues that everybody is facing is associated with malware, ransomware attacks. As you probably know, very recently, the national power grid of US faced an issue, and actually, the president in Washington, it had to go up and escalate up to that level that they had to issue a overall overarching guideline for the industry at large in that region. So this is basically true. I mean, ransomware and cyber attacks like this are no longer, acts of a few hackers here and there. It has become more of a national level threat, specifically when it comes to critical infrastructure, which is important for the nation, like national power grid, utilities, etc. Since these are very closely tied up, it actually needs to be protected as a whole so that there is no gap or vulnerability in the ecosystem. So that's what we are seeing globally, and there are various laws, guidelines, policies which are being created to ensure that no such threat remains in the ecosystem. Very recently, if you're aware, Ministry of Power had issued guidelines for India as well, which starts with appointment of a CISO and proper risk assessment being done. So it's a starting point, but that's a step in the right direction. In fact, the sector has been recognized as important for national critical infrastructure and comes under the purview of laws and guidelines associated with such an infrastructure. And I think it's a step in the right direction, and that's what is going to help ensure our national security when it comes to the power sector.
Thank you, Mr. Prasun. I think you rightly said, well said. Right. Just building on the top of it, my next question to Mr. Ashok, right? What we are saying, Ashok, is the government agencies are exploring the new cloud models, right? And so, how do you see the emergence of the hybrid and multi-cloud in the government space?
Thank you, Ajay. Let me just give a little background of our services, which the spectrum of our services, which NIC is rendering to the government. NIC has been offering multi-location cloud services from its national data centers under Meghraj, Government of India Cloud Initiative of MITI, since year 2014. Due to the benefits of the cloud at the center level, we had then introduced cloud computing services at the state level also, with the establishment of state clouds in more than 20 NIC state data centers. NIC has so far allocated around 25,000 VMs for around 2,000 users and applications, along with 5,000 websites of government ministries and departments and their subordinate organizations from its national and state clouds. to leverage the benefits of this cloud, NIC has been promoting, because legacy applications, with legacy applications, you won't be able to reap the benefits of cloud. NIC has been promoting development of cloud-ready applications based on microservice architecture, wherein each service is independent and atomic in nature. These services are accessible through APIs. Modularity in microservices supports independent updates and deployments, and helps to avoid single point failures, which can help prevent large scale outages. It's also facilitates seamless vertical and horizontal scaling. And AC has been providing various cloud service models from its premises. Some of the applications are of large nature, say for example, e-procurement, e-office, e-transport, e-PDS. All these services are citizen-centric services. Some of the projects are very large, are being provided indigenous VPC cloud setups. Some of the projects are utilizing cloud services from national cloud, and they are having their as well as their VPC setups. So these hybrid models have been going on, and we are working on more permutations and combinations. Some of the projects are using national cloud as a primary and VPC setups as a DR, and vice versa also. We are also working out with other CSPs, MITI and panel CSP providers, to work out the hybrid cloud models for between private and government as well, because some of the applications are now being hosted on these CSP clouds as well. Besides this, NIC has also developed in-house tools for DevOps ecosystem with continuous integration and delivery and deployment. This includes Kubernetes as a service for management, configuration, and automation of containerized applications. Container as a service, when users are not required to manage their resources, we do it on their behalf and focus on their users actually focus on their domain applications. NIC has also made a source code library, like a GitHub. It's available on our cloud portal. So these hybrid models have been going on in NIC for quite some time, because we understand every application is a different, right? Some have a legacy part also there, which can't be hosted in a public cloud.
Right, Mr. Ashok. And what we are seeing, just to add to that, what you said is, if you look at, across the globe, whether it's when I talk about multi-cloud, it's an Amazon of the world or Google of the world or Microsoft of the world. All these cloud provider has their own strength, right? So if you look at Azure, their focus is, the one of the strength they have is the Office, right? So what we are seeing is most of the customers are going towards not just the one cloud provider, but the multi-cloud, just to make sure that they get the best out of what is out there in the market. So this is where I see the whole industry.
USP I would like to add here. One more USP of NIC here is that we give an integrated support. You can't buy cloud over the counter. Right. Now applications have become so complicated, and every application has a microservice architecture, microsegmented. Application architecture is applications are very large in nature. So what I suggest is actually, instead of buying the things over the counter from these CSPs, we should also encourage. We should run the scope of a project between these these cloud service providers to arrive at a competitive pricing also.
Absolutely.
Understanding of the project as well.
Right. And then the name I took just for the giveaway, understanding that there are multiple cloud service provider. How do we really leverage the right strength and not just get logged into one specific vendor, but get best out of what is out there and go into a multi-cloud environment? All right. So thanks, Mr. Ashok. So my next question to Mr. Sachin, right? So Sachin, how do you see this whole public clouds for computing and storing the sensitive data will also ensure that there is a compliance to the data security standards?
Good morning, Ajay. Good morning, panelists and the audience. Before I start answering, I'll just give a small brief about Werks, because that would be more aligned, so that I can answer it in a much better way. So we actually operate our own data centers in India, in Mumbai, Pune, Delhi, and also have our own cloud which is Government of India MPLM, IT MPLM Cloud Platform or SAP HANA Cloud Platform. So yes, today, as a question suggests, one is driving the moving complete workloads to the cloud. How to ensure that it is compliant with the regulations and the regulation body. First of all, the whole journey itself needs to be charted out. You need to identify first, because all workloads cannot be a cloud candidate workloads. So first of all, you need to classify your workload not in terms of application, but also in terms of data sensitivity. So is it data sensitive? Is it data critical? Is it data public? You need to classify that. Based upon this, your cloud adoption model would vary. Your cloud adoption would, whether you want to go across for hybrid cloud or you want to go for public cloud, or whether you want to look at for a multi-cloud strategy. That completely moves around based upon the kind of criticality of data that you carry along, or you want to migrate to the public cloud or to the private clouds. The compliances, yes. The kind of workload today you want to move across to the cloud, you need to work along with your own compliances, but pretty much sure that much of the cloud providers like us are already complied with all your tier certifications, tier 3 certifications, ISO 27001 norms, maybe PCI DSS compliance, or maybe Government of India MIT compliance, empanelment as well. So much of this cloud providers are already complied and we can easily onboard them. But however, there will be a limited data that could be onboarded, there could be a limited data that will not be onboarded onto the cloud platform, because based upon your regulatory requirement, maybe there could be some portion of the data that is very sensitive that needs to reside in-house, and that can work like an edge data, and the cloud provider can provide an edge solution over there, whereas the core data can completely move over to the cloud computing platform and over a private cloud as well. Going a step ahead, we can then look at the kind of cloud adoption model that we're looking at. Because today, the compliance, governance, or even the security is a, I would say, two-way work. It's not a single responsibility of the cloud provider, but it's a mutual responsibility between the customer and the cloud provider. So yes, we need to identify based upon the kind of adoption model that a customer has gone for, whether it is a SaaS or PaaS or an IS model. A complete, transparent responsibility matrix should be prepared between the customer and us, because that is pretty much key or essential while onboarding much of these customers. We have been onboarding, I would say, government customers, wherein we have to first understand their regulatory compliances, because let's say they are working on in X area, and the compliance restricts a amount of data to be sent over to public cloud. So we had to plan out or chart out some local edge caching data or edge cloud solution at the customer premises, plus a full set of private cloud deployment or government cloud deployment at our own data centers, which could be Mumbai, Pune, or Delhi. So we have done that, and then based on governance and or the restrictions that a customer might have, we do deploy that. So yes, it's more to understand is classify your data. Second is understand the cloud adoption model, and third, all data workloads can be cloud adopted model. So you need to identify which workloads could be put across, which are the legacy applications that can be onboarded or migrated towards cloud, and then we can go ahead and help across.
Thanks, Mr. Sachin. And I think you rightly said it's all about how do we really classify the data. So there is a lot of education needs to be done. And I'll give one just example before I go to the next panel member. If you look at, if you classify the data, for example, meter ID sitting in the cloud doesn't make sense until unless it's an orphan data, right? So until unless you mix up with some more data, then it becomes a confidential or, private data or the protected data, right? So it's all about how do we really classify the data, number one, and how do there's a lot of education needs to be done, because still people are very conservative when they look at cloud and my data is going out of the premise and sitting in the cloud. But they also need to understand that there is a whole data classification needs to be done. What can be stored in the cloud and what can be stored in the on-premise. So it has to be a hybrid approach. Absolutely.
Ajay, if you look at today, we are speaking about smart meters. And let's say you're working on smart meters, and where the data is going to be the movement data between the edge cloud and the meter is going to be too high. You need to architect a solution wherein you have a combination of edge cloud, private cloud, and a public cloud. Let's say you are running some marketing workloads, which is a non-core data for a discom company. That could be easily run on a public cloud. Whether you want to run a honeypot, it could run on a public cloud. Whereas your core data can run on a private cloud. And something like an edge cloud to be deployed across the locations, let's say Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, ABC locations as per your local requirements or the availability of the local areas.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Sachin. So my next question to Sanjay. Sanjay, I believe you're driving. So, but my next question to you is: if you look at utilities as an industry, it's a asset heavy industry, and traditionally they have followed more kind of capex model, which is really means is buying the assets to provide the right kind of services and run their operations. But what we when we look at cloud or a SaaS model or a PaaS model, which is basically moving more towards the OpEx model, moving away from the CapEx to the OpEx model. But again, there is a whole economics and commercial piece also comes into the picture in terms of what part can be part of the CapEx and what part can be the OpEx. But as overall, it's a moving more from the CapEx and OpEx model. So how do you see that the whole transition is going to happen, or the whole change management is going to happen from the CapEx to the OpEx model? Sanjay, you're on mute, Mr. Sanjay.
Yes, actually, I'm sorry. I'm traveling. I've just landed at Visakhapatnam, so it was a little bit disoriented for me, and I cannot open my mask because there are people here.
Sure.
So first of all, thank you so much, giving me this opportunity. I was scheduled to remain in Kolkata. That's why I accepted this invitation. Especially when you have a person like Mr. Kaul, with whom we have been working for the last 5 years. I have little to say because he is a master in the game, and as far as my experience in managing the state data center in the state of West Bengal is concerned, changing from this capex to opex model is a really difficult model, proposition, especially for government right now. Government is right now focused towards giving benefits directly to the people. So government is ready to actually spend money in developing, some infrastructure, but is not very much ready until and unless that infrastructure becomes sustainable on its own. So that's why NIC actually, while managing NDC, they have moved from the this zero payment to a payment model. That means earlier they were not charging any money, only a little bit of service charge. Right now they are also charging money in order to actually remain sustainable. For the state of West Bengal, which has actually increased its application from the number of, in 2015-16, the number of applications on the this 24 TB cloud that we had at that point of time was only 37 big applications were there, critical applications were there, and other taking all the portals and others taking into consideration, it was less than 100. And today we are actually making a data center of 1.5 petabyte. We are into that. We are coming up within the next 3 months. It is under process, and it is completely cloud ready, and all the services. And right now we have hosted more than 2,500 portals, applications in total. So the VM capacity has already is crossing nearly 3,000, and we are moving into the domain of 5,000 VMs. So you are understanding that with Duare Sarkar and all this people ready services like student credit card, then this Lakshmi Bhandar, all these applications that they're all application ready. As I was flying out from Kolkata, I was seeing a video of Darjeeling, how that even the most distant locality, people were given services, and all these data are being hosted on the cloud platform of SDC, which Mr. Kaul has been actually helping us in building, because he has been visiting us, reviewing us and guiding us in that. So I take this opportunity in thanking him and his organization, our deep regards and respect.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjay.
So coming into the issue of moving into the OPEX is really very difficult, because suddenly the government of West Bengal has decided to let open the entire state data center for MSMEs and startups. You can't even imagine that right now our state data center with all its security has been let open for MSMEs and startups. Already we have 31 applications in the line, and 7 portals and applications hosted on the state data center. Even from them we are not taking any money. So I do not really know how to face this challenge and how we would be going ahead in managing this whole situation until and unless we really go into an OPEX model. That's why we have decided to actually explore in order to in bringing this infrastructure of further development from AWS or for that matter Oracle or others, because we have cold rails and the facilities and the infrastructure ready. So if they can come and they can build up their own racks and servers, and from that we can actually provide containerized solutions for the microservices that are coming up in large number. And for that matter, NDC right now is also working as SI for different applications, and our state data center is not prepared right now for working as SI. So there is a huge gap. So this gap could be actually utilized by the third party, the organizations like Mr. Sachin and others. So we would be actually welcoming them in building this infrastructure services and hybrid model, so that the government services are actually given support for the critical services. Those who are very mission critical and data critical, they will be kept, or their mainly their data storage will be there in the government cloud, and remaining applications and other facilities with the additional services that are required for this data management, the MDM, that will be provided by the third party. In that manner, we can actually create some revenue and cope with the situation. Before I end, I would like to just request you to go into the West Bengal state data, West Bengal state broadband policy 2020. Under that, we have a beautiful guideline that is called West Bengal Public Transactional Data Sharing Guidelines. We are actually anonymizing the public transactional data. We are creating a platform, and we are putting all our public transactional data in anonymized manner in that platform, so that any industry, any MSME, any startup can utilize that. Because without quality transactional data, no service can have a proof of concept. So this will be a great service to the country, to the nation, and to the new initiatives of the startups and all. So this is another place where we will be actually embracing different services, new initiatives, and that way we might tide over this critical, you can say, deflection from going from this capex model to opex model. Thank you so much.
Sure, Sanjay. and Sanjay, you rightly said that. What I've recent study, what I've seen is across the globe, there are a lot of study or views are being presented in specifically moving some of these opex cost into the capex cost, specifically around the software license, the migration cost, and the build cost, right? So let's leverage the platform and the infrastructure, but when it comes to the whole software, the license and the build cost and the migration cost, we can move into the capex model. So all right, so what I'll do is basically let's move to the second round, and in this round I would like to hear from your view, what your company is doing to really help the utilities in the overall journey, right? So I'll start with Mr. Prasun, right? So Prasun, how you see the Thales can help in the strengthening of the cybersecurity posture as per the cybersecurity guidelines recently released by Ministry of Power for the sector?
Okay, so Basically, Thales as an organization is already participating with different utility companies. In fact, we are part, our solutions are part of the advanced metering infrastructure security classified products. And we have a major play in protecting the head end system and the actual meters from getting getting attacked in any way. Now, Thales has a complete platform. We have also invested in Make in India and have a joint partnership with Samtel in India. We are creating secure meters through that joint partnership, and basically you'd be happy to note we are even exporting out of India through that venture. So we have participated globally all across the world. We have well acknowledged solutions regarding this. When it comes to India, we are looking at opportunities for joint partnership with utilities organizations to probably deliver at an OPEX cost, smart metering as a service, you might call it, and see if we can benefit our nation in any way. When it comes to cybersecurity, our solutions are well acknowledged. Most critical issues that is faced in any utilities sector is related to, as I said, ransomware and key management. So basically, data protection and key management and security of communications within the infrastructure. So we have solutions in place that address all of those critical aspects of this infrastructure, which we are building into an OPEX model, and probably with partnerships with relevant utility companies, we would be able to deliver that as a secure infrastructure to the nation.
Thanks, Mr. Prasun. So my next question to Mr. Ashok, right? And again, Ashok, please share your, what your NIC is doing. So what we are saying is, one nation, one platform, right? Leveraging the power of the cloud technology. Can you please share what NIC is doing to support the various government agencies when we talk about the one nation, one platform? You're on mute, Mr. Ashok.
Sorry, NIC has been closely associated with the government at the central and state levels for more than 4 decades now in various aspects of e-governance, which included establishment of a nationwide ICT infrastructure such as a NICNet, NKN, national data centers, VC infrastructure, state data centers, national cloud. We started our journey of data centers way back in 2002 with 50 racks at NIC headquarters, which was augmented with NDC Hyderabad, with the establishment of NDC Hyderabad with 100 racks, then with NDC Pune in year 2010 with 150 racks, 180 racks, and then we made a history. Actually, we established the largest data center in the government at that point in time in year 2011. It was National Data Center at Delhi, Shastri Park. This was with 475 racks, and this was completely virtualized. And the virtualization which we had done was at that point in time with the best commercial tools, COTS-based, commercial on-the-shelf based tools, and as well as some of the open source technologies as well. And then recently in year 2018, we had added one more data center with 275 racks in eastern region of the country. I must say at Bhubaneswar. This is a fully cloud-enabled data center, and this data center we had made on a sustainable model. Here we are hosting all the applications pertaining to payment, wherein we take payments to sustain the operational costs from the subordinate government organizations, corporations, like that. So actually, NIC, after that, with this, we are also having 10 to 50 rack data centers in each state capital. Right, and these centers we call as the NIC state data centers, and with this we have a complete overall data center space of 1 lakh square feet. Now, with the launch of Digital India program in year 2015, the growth in and requirements of these application requirements, because we cater to complete government, starting from president's house to the district level, and had increased actually manifold. Lot of government applications actually were launched in 2015, but we had, prior to that, only in year 2014 we had launched an NIC National Cloud Services from data center at Delhi, under the ambit of Meghraj, Government of India Cloud Initiative, as I told you already. And we remained as the only agency for a number of years on that platform. And later on, MITI had actually empaneled, accredited some of the private cloud service providers as well. It's I think number is around 12 to 13 now. And in view of the benefits at of the cloud at the central level, what we had done, we had introduced cloud computing setups at the district levels, state levels also, as well, to cater to the application development requirement in states, testing requirements in states, and production requirements in states. Earlier, we used to have around 2 servers in each district, right? And this amounted to around 1,600 servers. This has all eliminated need for these kind of servers, and these state clouds are catering to small requirements. You must be aware, in recently we had a disaster kind of a scenario in country, all over the world, because of COVID pandemic. We had developed a lot of applications, migration applications, RT-PCR applications, all cloud portals, even desktop web hosting was done from our cloud at that point in time to sustain the government. And Kisan Rath Yatra, that application front end and background was hosted from NIC Cloud to sustain the movement of agriculture produce during the pandemic, and many applications pertaining to containment, and specimen capturing by Anganwadi workers and all workers at all levels, and many portals pertaining to COVID barriers, and so on. Complete government is actually hosted on NIC cloud now. It amounts to 5,000 websites, right? 2,000 applications recently on the cloud, national cloud and state clouds, and around 25,000 VMs we have already allocated. And we are also maintaining complete history of our variants of COVID on our cloud. We have facilitated this for ICM or Data Hub for the COVID, and so on.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Ashok. And I think you rightly said, right? So my next question to Mr. Sachin, right? So Sachin, we talk about cloud. We have been talking about cloud and security and, making sure that we meet the regulatory requirements. But the need of the hour is we also need to drive the innovation, right? The innovation is a big buzzword across the industry, across the globe. And we need to drive the innovation, not just moving to the cloud and meet the regulatory requirements. We need to drive the innovation. So if you can share your views in terms of what Werks can help the utilities to drive that innovation in this whole cloud journey.
Sure. So as Werks, as we have our own data centers in Mumbai, Pune, and Delhi, all of them are being Tier 3 compliant. So we have been onboarding government customers, government PSUs, large PSUs with us for a long period of time. In my earlier answer, I spoke about compliances. I spoke about data segmentation, classification. We actually help customers during the complete journey. The journey is never meant just to push across a customer towards a cloud platform, but actually work along with him, identify his pain points, work along his compliances, regulatory, the data criticality, exclude the data which is sensitive, understand the kind of applications it's trying to run. So, example, I mentioned about smart metering application. I can't just throw all the smart meter data directly onto the backend cloud sitting at a central location. So why not create an edge cloud, which is nearer to the location for the smart meter, and which could locally collect the data, and that data could be then thrown back to the core cloud computing platform doing processing, and it could run further AI/ML kind of applications. Today we are government employment cloud provider, so we have been easily been onboarding this PSUs or government departments onto our platform. When I say government recognized, it means mighty empaneled cloud provider. So and again, we are SAP certified cloud provider, so it becomes easy for customers to even onboard or host their applications. But much more so than that, during the couple of points that you spoke about, which were like about capex to opex, the cloud adoption actually makes it much more easier for customers or maybe for government departments to work with providers like us, where we deliver complete solution on OpEx model. Today, I typically advocate the data compliance to be or data security to be not only restricted only to a firewall, but we look towards data in storage, with data in motion, and data in transition. Everything should be encrypted. Today, we use hardware security solutions which could even encrypt data in memory, which is actually recommended to much of the customers based on the data criticality that they are carrying around. So yes, there are various options available. We do provide them. We help them completely and secure their environment as per their compliance and all the regulatory needs. So it does not necessarily mean purchasing a huge amount of capex or investing a huge amount of capex to consume or start your cloud journey. Your cloud journey can start small, and then based on experience, we can keep on onboarding or adding up much more applications, and that's where we are. We want the confidence, we want to win the confidence, start onboarding them one by one based upon their application or understand the application's usage as well. You need to understand where the application is going to be used more, whether it's a more rural based application or it's more metro based application, and then architect something. So we have been leveraging all the solutions that we have with us because we are the, I would say, network dense data center today with 3 internet exchanges hosted within us to lower the latency, network latency. So we use that, we leverage that extensively for complete architecture. And I guess we can provide those solutions easily while onboarding any DISCOM onto our platform.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Sachin. And I think you rightly said the whole edge computing is one of the critical piece we all need to drive, and specifically when we are talking about the whole 5G will make the life more easier when we talk about the whole edge computing. So just moving on, and I see Mr. Krutarth is there and Mr. Sanjay is there. Both are representing the utilities. So my next question to Mr. Krutarth, and then I'll go to the Sanjay, because I just wanted to understand their views from the utilities perspective. So Mr. Krutarth, if you look at the adoption of cloud is still very low in the utilities, right? And due to many reasons, right? As you represent the utilities, right? I want to hear your view in terms of how you're planning to accelerate the whole enterprise cloud journey and unlock the most business values from the whole cloud journey.
Yeah, thank you, Ajay. First of all, good morning to all of you. And thank you very much for this opportunity as government discoms to give you such a platform to understand the cloud computing. Now, moving to that questions, there are mainly 3 issues are holding utilities back. Working methods and mindsets that resolves around the safeguarding the major assets and minimizing the operational risk. The difficulty of attracting digital talent to what are perceived as a long era organization, and the presence of complex legacy IT systems that slow innovation down, right? So overcoming this issue isn't easy, but leading utilities succeed by taking 3 critical steps. The first is adopting a digital ways of working, which will involve the increasing their agility, their capacity for sensing challenges and opportunities, and quickly mobilizing their organization to respond. This takes time, so some utilities seek shortcuts by acquiring and partnering with the digital startups or setting in-house digital factories to produce a digital applications using the latest technology and working methods. Okay. The second key steps, I think, is attracting and retaining the digital talent. Organizations seldom seen an innovative cutting-edge business. To boost their recruitment efforts, utilities can emphasize the intellectual challenge and reward of a digital agenda, the social value of providing a community with a reliable energy, or the role technology can play in reducing a utilities' environmental impact. Finally, the leading utilities progressively modernize their IT architecture in the environment. First, by simplifying their product portfolio and business process, then by shifting from their old monolithic systems to a new modular IT architecture. They use of the self software package to meet essential needs, but develop custom applications for setting where distinctive capabilities can confer competitive advantage, such as a mobile enabled field operations. In DGVCL, we use GPRS LT billing. So there is a mobile, and the meter reader has that mobile, and they go to the customer premises and bill through the Android application and like that. So while a comprehensive digital transformation can take years even for the most advanced utility, these are the steps I think to accelerate the digital transformation in the utilities.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Krutar. Thank you so much for sharing your views. And I'll go to Sanjay also, because he represents also the West Bengal Electricity Distribution Company. So Sanjay, what's your view in terms of how you're planning to accelerate the whole enterprise cloud journey?
I'm sorry to start that I do not represent West Bengal State Electricity Board. I belong to Information Technology and Electronics Department. Okay. So somehow it was misconstrued. Don't worry. But as far as the West Bengal State Electricity Board divided in 3 corporations, that the transmission, distribution, and production, all of them actually have gone into the cloud mode. They have created their own data centers, and they have made DR in the state data centers specifically, and they are at different locations too. So with regards to West Bengal power utility, they are firstly moving into the smart meter mode. They have brought out the first tranche of putting into the 249,000 smart meters, the very first tranche. In the next tranche, they will be actually in the next coming January, February, they will be putting up 550,000 smart, and so forth. The total smart meters that we is not less than 2 crore across the state, while having a populace of around 10 crore. So smart meter brings a great problem as far as cyber security is concerned, because today smart meter should be agnostic. That means the smart meter must actually measure not only power utility, it should measure gas and the water. So smart meter has to be agnostic of service, because the people cannot afford, or government cannot afford multiple smart meters in the same household, because that will create another problem, because each smart meter will be having its own connectivity. And not only that, they connect within themselves. When the smart meter is not talking to the cloud directly, the HES, they are talking amongst each other, so that they sync, and whenever someone gets connected to the HES, and the total data is synced. So a huge problem is going to come with the advent of 5G. Benefits will come, but threats will come in a much larger manner. We should actually ready ourselves. Not only that, this non-conventional energy, that means the power, the hydel and others, wind, these energy is being put into the grid. So what will happen? What will be the interface? How they will be actually measured? How smart meter will actually accept that? So smart meter will not be a monologue, it will be a dialogue. So as soon as it starts receiving other data input from the individuals, as I give the example of creation of solar energy at my home and putting into the grid, like everything. So then the next problem of cybersecurity will come. So sure. Taking the whole thing into concern, if we consider even the latest debacle that the Mumbai the power utility saw, it is more of a failing of a man or the employee, rather than an intrusion or brute force intrusion. So whenever there is a brute force intrusion in the utility, it is a state actor. Some state actors are behind that. But incapability and callousness of people like us, because we do not follow cyber hygiene. whosoever is here right at this point of time actually use multiple devices, or every device remains connected, and unutilized applications, they are into our device. So we know very much, those who are here right now, they know very well about cyber hygiene, but they do not follow. So the problem is the people who are managing, the managers of the critical information infrastructure, they must start following cyber hygiene, number one, and they must start actually, face real life threats through simulations, because they actually depend upon people or the technologists or the engineers who report to them. They do not do it themselves. So if I'm a CII manager, I must start having a simulated attack regularly and through a drill. Drill should not be a casual drill. And the very basic approach is to actually learn what type of side channel intrusions the utilities and the CIIs will be facing. And last but not the least, the thing that we have not talked here is the PII. The personally identifiable information is one that is sold and bought. So how these data centers or how these utilities, utilities per se they have two different structures. One is the service, another is the actual infrastructure utility. Infrastructure utility, they do not create PII. Services create PII. So services are based upon applications. So application security and safeguarding PII, which are sold and bought, that should be ensured by creating cyber hygiene amongst the CII managers. Thank you so much.
Sure, Mr. Sanjay. And I think you rightly said, if you look at the overall guidelines of the segregation of the roles and responsibilities, everything in the cloud is where the cloud service provider is coming and making sure that everything is being taken care. But everything off the cloud is where the implementer and other need to come in and make sure that there is a right security in place, right? So, all right. I think it's a very good discussion, and thanks for sharing your views, right? And just in interest of time, what I'll do is basically I'll just give you 30 seconds just to wrap this up with the final view, and before we pick up the questions from the audience, and I'll start with Mr. Prasun.
Great. So I think lots of very important stuff came out of this discussion, especially related to PII data security. And when it comes to the cloud, we talked about shared responsibility model, about maintaining sovereignty of data in the cloud. And if you talk about a roadmap, we talked about cybersecurity awareness. We talked about probably a way of technically enforcing and reducing human errors in the ecosystem, apart from protecting data from state actors and external vendors. So from my perspective, I think the discussion was very fruitful, and a lot of pointers out here that can potentially help reinforce cyber hygiene within the utilities sector.
Thanks, Mr. Prasun. Yeah. I'll go to Mr. Ashok. Ashok, your final view. You're on mute, Ashok.
Sorry, one more thing which we have experienced over the period of time was that it is becoming very difficult to sustain the kind of a licensing which is coming up in the market now with the commercial cost based cloud licensing and all those things, moving from processor to course, which is putting up a very heavy cost for cloud operations. So what we have done, we have developed an in-house cloud based on open source cloud, and which we have also offered to various government applications from NDC Shastri Park and NDC Bhubaneswar now. And besides that, also we have developed our own in-house cloud self-service cloud portal, cloud.gov.in. All the cloud platforms, all the clouds of NIC would be available from this particular portal. That is and that is national level cloud, state level cloud, open source cloud, or any commercial cloud which NIC would be offering from its data centers.
Thanks, Mr. Ashok.
Yeah,
Over to you,
and also
Sachin.
one more thing,
Yes, sure.
all the government utilities, all the government for the matter. I was just mentioning, we are already having 5,000 websites of government on our cloud. Besides 2,000 recently, applications created under the national cloud. So that makes it around 7,000 applications are already on the cloud at the national cloud level and state cloud level. All the utilities of the government. Say, for example, Urja Mitra app, Kisan Rath app, then digital locker, Umang. These are all hosted on our cloud.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Ashok. Sachin, over to you. Your final view.
Thanks, Ajay. Thanks, panelists. I'm pretty much sure that so as Webbers Data Centers and Cloud, we have been working along with government departments, PSUs for a long period of time. We have been onboarding many customers. We don't only just push across a solution, but we actually work along with them through the complete journey. Because when I say journey, it does not just mean a solution. It means understanding the solution, the usage pattern, the application, the end consumers who are going to connect and consume it. I won't repeat this line, but again, end consumers could be rural, urban, semi-rural. We need to identify those because the government department, DISCOMs works in various places, and that's how we work. We provide solutions right from edge cloud, the core cloud computing platform, private cloud, government cloud. But those are words unless until we employ or architect a proper solution, which is again secure, not only in storage or not only in transition, but also in motion. So storing a data, securing data in complete end-to-end medium is really important today. And that's where Mr. Sanjay has also touched based upon a couple of points. The example he put across for smart meters, wherein the 5G would actually, the smart meters need to be more secure. Yes, truly, as we go ahead with these IoT devices, ensuring that those IoT devices get regular updates and they have the proper patches done is equally important. And that's where we work along with the DISCOMs, the government departments to ensure that the complete solution is there end to end. Whether it's a simple colo, whether they want a bare metal cloud, or whether it's a complex architecture or on AI/ML application.
Sure.
So we should on that part.
Thanks, Mr. Sachin. Krutharth, you have 30 seconds.
Sure. Add one point. Maybe it's a generic point, but yes, as we plan an entry strategy for the cloud computing platform, we also should plan for an exit strategy, because if you are not satisfied with the cloud computing platform, you need to have workloads which are platform agnostic. That means you should be able to switch over from one cloud provider to another easily. And that's my last statement.
Absolutely. And Mr. Krutharth, you have 30 seconds to share your final view.
Yeah, thank you, Ajay. Being a government organization IT person, this complete cloud computing is a completely new thing to us. It's like an alien land for us. So I note down the three main points when we focus on to migrate the cloud on. You first get input from the experts within your organization before seriously considering the cloud adoption. Talk with your internal stakeholders who have a clear understanding of the value of the cloud technology and then core business objectives of your organization. This is the first thing. The second thing is your organization digital transformation will affect everyone you work with, not only with you, including vendors, contractors, and other partners also. So unless you want to lose them, you will need to help them understand how existing workflows will change and how your company will navigate to the cloud computing. And the third is the best partners, the best cloud computing or implementers partners are more than just technical expert, of course. They will be able to help utilities to turn cloud technology into a competitive advantage and empower you to think more strategically and proactively about how it can be deployed. So that is my view on cloud computing.
Thanks, Mr. Krutharth. Sanjay, over to you. 30 seconds, your view.
So really, I will take only 30 seconds. I would request everyone to go into the chat. I have shared a link. Please click on that link and take a pledge, because this is the National Cyber Security Awareness Month. We should all take a pledge that we will ensure and we will follow cyber hygiene practices. If cyber hygiene practices are followed, then only we can save ourselves. Thank you so much, and I'm really indebted to receive this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. Sanjay. So MC, I don't know, we can take some questions before we wrap up or before we close the session. Right. So one of the question is to Mr. Prasun. Do cybersecurity risk assessment include threats, vulnerabilities, and impact specific to smart grid assets? How are the threats and vulnerabilities identified, and what is the periodicity of threats and vulnerability assessment? You're on mute, Mr. Prasun.
Sorry for that. I hope I'm audible now.
Yeah, you are.
So that's a great question. I think one of the important aspects that came out of this panel discussion is the importance of data governance as the first step towards having or forming any kind of risk assessment or threat intelligence at all. So I think somebody here said, if I am not too wrong, it was Sachin, said classification of data, proper classification of data, and not only when you say proper classification of data, contextualized classification. For example, if a data resides in a particular data repository, for example, a name, but there is no other information associated with the name in that same data repository, then it might not have such a high risk. But if that same name resides with other PII and sensitive data within the same data repository, then it becomes a larger risk to have, and proper remediation action should be taken behind it. So that, I would think, is the first step. When it comes to and once you have done that and you have associated proper risk scores to various repositories that you might have within your infrastructure, then comes the aspect of threat intelligence. There are many solutions out there. Usually the way threat intelligence is gathered is by associating in partnership with organizations that are in the business of maintaining threat intelligence, not only locally but globally. And there are several organizations that do that, including us. And also invest in technologies that, threat intelligence can never be 100%. You can only have probably 90% coverage by doing that. There will always be a certain amount of risk no matter what you do, for which you have to take compensatory measures. Now, those compensatory measures can usually be in the form of a plan B in place, where you are ensuring that your data, no matter what, is only accessed by a whitelisted group of applications, a whitelisted group of processes, and privileged users do not have access. So it comes to best cyber practices at the end of the day. So if you have that as a baseline, and then you build your gates and walls on top of that, then it probably makes sense. But nobody can deny the absolute critical importance of data governance as being the first step before
Absolutely.
you go.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Prasun. MC, any other questions? I don't see. Again, to you, Mr.
I want to add to what Mr. Prasun has just told. Two things I would like to just add. One is secure coding practice, because the security is by design. We always look into the retrofitting of security into applications. We develop applications in a silo, and then we retrofit with security. So secure coding practice will bring, the best practices Mr. Prasun has just told into the development. This is number one. And that will actually be, you can say, facilitated by creation of this sandbox as a service. To be given by SIs or data centers. So this is one side of the story, and the other side of the story is in software the S stands for security, and we always forget that. So these two things, if a developer, if a coder, if a scripter, if a manager, they actually remember these things, I hope the situation will be far better. and risk assessment requirement will come down, and huge OEMs will not be required per se, because as per OWASP, the top 10 vulnerabilities, what top 20 vulnerabilities, if one actually attends to them, most of our applications on a day-to-day basis, they are taken care of along with the cyber hygiene practices.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. And I think, if I have to add to that, Mr. Sanjay, it's a top and bottom up approach, right? So top down is more looking into what are the security guidelines and best practices out there to bring into your enterprise, right? And the bottom up approach is really looking into each and every devices, look into each and every use cases and see how we can make sure that those things are secure, right? So it's a top and bottom up approach. It's a hybrid approach. I see two more questions, and one to Mr. Prasun and one to Mr. Ashok. So I'll start with Mr. Prasun. How are the access credential authorized, issued, managed, verified, and revoked and audited?
Okay, so there are two kinds of access credentials when it comes to an IoT deployment like utilities sector that we are talking about right now. One is the access credentials that devices have when it comes to network access and communicating with software and services that are centrally located. And another is the access credential which users have or applications have. So application access credentials and user access credentials are pretty well covered area, in cybersecurity. So everybody is aware what are the critical steps that need to be taken to ensure these access credentials and what solutions to have in place to ensure these access credentials are not compromised in any which way. Some of the best practices are two-factor authentication, having proper access management rules, privileged access management rules, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to application services access and when it comes to machine access, that's where access credentials are very, it's not very well covered in cybersecurity itself. In fact, ISACA and other chapters, they are actually devoting a lot of time in covering all of that through their ecosystems right now. Machine-to-machine communication, unfortunately, is a very gray area, and usually in larger cases, in most of the attacks that we have seen occurring globally, it's usually that access credential which is compromised. So that is where major security players have a larger role to play in order to come up with unique solutions that address that critical area. In case of India, I think we are most of the IoT components here, which are into meters, usually use a single key architecture, which essentially means that the access credential itself is just a single key that is used to authenticate, and if that key gets compromised, the entire infrastructure, at least from a machine-to-machine communication level, is very, but the good thing is that has been addressed, that has been realized, and I think in most of the, at least by the Ministry of Power, some of the standards which has been mentioned when it comes to securing communications in this aspect actually address that area. So having secure key management and ensuring proper control of machine-to-machine identities is also, will have a critical role to play.
Right. No, absolutely. And I'm sure there will be a whole different perspective when we talk about the whole quantum computing also, right? Which is again on the way.
Yeah.
I would like to add a point over here. So yes, as rightly mentioned by Prasun, the machine-to-machine is pretty much security access pretty key. Rather, I would say there are a couple of questions which always during cyber or the ACS, right, planning and access control. Couple of questions should already be asked for any individual or a machine, which is like, who is he and why does he require this access? And that's one. But more than that, second, you also need to understand the east-west traffic that's happening between machine to machine. If it is normal, whether it's absurdly high, exponentially high. So you need to have devices, solutions that can actually drill down and learn about the packets moving between the machines. That's pretty much important today. Third, there are so many cybersecurity tools that are coming up. There are layers and layers of tools. There is SOAR, then there's HSM, then there's SIM, TM, PAM, etc. That today, providers like us, we look at some tool that is AI/ML driven tool that can speak with all these 8, 10 multiple tools and provide a meaningful answer to our customer or to ourselves as well. So that's something where direction has also been moving across. So one is that. Third, even on the cloud adoption model, please ensure that all your data should be in the encrypted state. Whether if you're looking at a SaaS model, please look out somewhere you might find a tick mark where it would say encrypt the data. Please enable that.
Right.
Well, rest upon the IS and other model, you always have different options available. But then yes, I won't dwell deep into cyber security now. But then, yeah, you should look at the CIA fundamentals of ISO. There's a confidential integrity and availability. Follow those guidelines.
Right. The whole zero trust architecture, boundaryless, right? The whole discussion. So last question, just in interest of time, to Mr. Ashok.
Add something to it. Yeah, Mr. Ajay, since NIC caters to whole government, right? I mean, NIC is also providing government complete email, and government officers are mandated to use NIC email. So we use this email credentials as a single sign-on onto our cloud as well. Right. Besides that, whenever you can log in using these credentials onto our cloud portal, and then there is a multi-factor authentication. It can be your mobile token, it can be your OTP, and it can be your biometric as well, and Aadhaar enabled authentication as well. And beyond that, when you actually log into the service layer of the cloud, right, there users are only allowed to log in through VPN. Right, that is a secured tunnel through which they would be allowed to. Whenever we allocate a user a cloud space, we also allocate a VPN at that point in time. But that's said and done. But the main problem is when you open your gates, when you open the ports, that is the HTTP layer, which is most vulnerable, as other members said. So what happens here? We have completely micro-segmented our cloud. Right, each user is a separate user. Even each IP is a separate user for us. So if there's a movement, not from north to south, if it's an east-west traffic movement, so there we allocate firewalls. Right, firewalls to all these users, software firewalls, hardware firewalls, right, to prevent any untoward malicious transfer of any malware between the two users. Because earlier focus was on north to southbound traffic, wherein we are having multiple utilities. We are having DDoS, then we are having firewall, then we are having SSL. So many things are there, but this layer is most vulnerable when traffic moves from one user space to another user space.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Ashok. MC, I don't know. I see there is a one last question, but I don't know. I think we are running out of the time. Do you want me to ask that last question, or we can?
It would be great if you can just answer one last question.
Okay. So that's to Mr. Ashok. How can SI help to bring the confidence of utilities on cloud in terms of standardization, managed service, and securities provided by cloud service provider?
See, recently we have done a kind of an empanelment for SIs to provide a support for cloud managed services, right? When, as I was mentioning earlier, also cloud is not something which can be taken over the counter. It can't be taken over the counter. We have to have a solution-based approach. So what happened in this empanelment we have done? We have then kind of an empanelment wherein part of cloud resources you can buy over the counter, but the projects wherein you have a complex nature, architecture is complex, and one has to understand in totality as to what functionalities user is asking for. So in that case, we'll be running this scope of that project within our empaneled vendors, and obviously that will be helpful to users to get the best quote in terms of resources and in terms of capacity building. So I think SIs has to contribute in this direction.
Sure.
We'll have to.
Sure.
because you see there are already 13 to 12 CSPs empaneled under MITI, but government users are not familiar with their model of offering cloud offerings. It can't be taken over the counter, so that requires another set of floating a kind of a tender and all those things. They will have to have this kind of an approach. Something has to be over the counter, and remaining has to be scope has to be run with the already empaneled rates and all the empaneled vendors.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Ashok, and thanks everyone. Right. I think it was a great session.
One last question for Mr. Prasun.
Okay.
The question is, how are lessons learned addressed? Are response plans updated to incorporate lessons learned? To Mr. Prasun. One last question.
Okay, I think what the question means is how can we learn from probably challenges that have already occurred and incorporate them within to ensure future prevention of such issues. So this is something as we most of us who are associated with cybersecurity already know that security is not a static point, right? It's not a destination that you get to and then relax. It is always a journey. So being part of the cybersecurity field, I think everybody here is aware that risk assessments are not something that you stop doing once it is done. We all know threat and vulnerability assessments need to happen annually. So there are already process and procedures within place that every CISO is aware of. And there are such review cycles that happen that ensure that any previous issues are well addressed and acknowledged and are part of the current risk assessment that is done within an organization. I hope that answers that question.
Thanks, Mr. Prasun. So I would like to thank everyone. Right, it's a great discussion, a lot of good points, and I'm sure this will help the utilities to start their journey. If I don't know where they are, most of the utilities have started or they are still thinking of. And this whole discussions and the points shared by Mr. Sachin, Mr. Prasun, Mr. Ashok, Sanjay, and Mr. Krutat will really going to help the utilities to start thinking in that direction. Thank you everyone for your time. Over to you, MC.
Thank you.
Well, thanks all the panelists. It was a really thoughtful discussion. Thank you so much. Have a great time.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.